Hi-ho neighbors, Rado Goji here, and welcome to a video that should have come out last week, but I left the darn figure on my desk at work, so that didn't happen. I digress. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Kamen Rider ZO RKF Armor Rider Series O's armor. Kamen Rider O's was that Kamen Rider that had the medals with the animals on them. And he would, line them up 3 at a time, and they would give him different combo powers and whatnot, and it was really cool. As far as the O's armor is concerned, it is quite a bit different from most of the standard armors. Much like the Forza armor was sort of its own thing with its own internal gimmick, the O's armor has that as well, as it is made up of 3 mechanical-looking animals. Kamen Rider O's default form, the Tatoba combo, was made up of, obviously, 3 animals, like all of his combos were. There was the hawk, or taka, the tiger, or tora, and the grasshopper, or bata. Taka, tora, bata is where Tatoba comes from. And the 3 animals that are here are represented by those medals. So first up we have the hawk, which is actually just one solid piece here. In fact, you can actually just kind of tell that it's a faceplate just by looking at the bottom of it, but it's got some, little molded in detail on the inside there, but ultimately it doesn't do anything, just kind of sits. I mean, all of these animals really just sit. They don't really have much articulation to them or anything like that. Next up we have the biggest of the 3, which is the tiger. Yeah, he's just kind of there. Got obvious ball joints. This is obviously the body and arms. I mean, you can even see the ride watch holders on there. And a very elongated set of claws. That'll just stand there. It doesn't stand up particularly well either. Because of the way that these are kind of on like peg joints, they can very easily move from side to side. So if you want them to stand up, it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to get them to do so. I don't think I'm going to be able to win with that. It's also a little bit lopsided. With the this side is a little bit chunkier, and thus will affect things. There we go. That'll do. And lastly, we have the grasshopper, which does have a little bit of articulation in the antennae there. The legs do move, but also for transformation purposes, they kind of come apart at the knee like that. So I don't really consider them to be articulated in the traditional sense. But much like the others, it mainly just kind of sits there. Now obviously the main gimmick of these is that they combine into armor for our main figure. What we have right here, we got ZO. I already took off the ride watch holders off of his arms. And I've already deployed a belt because, oddly enough, this set does not come with a belt like the X-Aid or the Build or even the Ghost armor sets did, and that's why you'll probably see, like if you look at promotional pictures and the pictures on the packaging, you'll see the O's armor ZO, but he has only one ride watch on his belt. That's because they didn't make a special belt for this. For reasons I'm not going to get into now. So basically, if you just have the figure on its own and just this armor set, you're not going to have any other belt to use. But it makes more sense for me to have 2 ride watches when you have an armor form, because that's how the show freaking works. So I just kind of yoinked the belt off of the X-Aid armor, and I'm using that. So we'll just stand him up here for now. And we're going to start by disassembling our animals here. Now the hawk is actually just going to stay the way he is because it's only one piece, like I said before. The tiger is actually going to come like completely apart. I'm going to take off the front and back from the ball joints there, and then we're going to disconnect the legs from whatever parts there are. They just kind of unpeg, and we're also going to straighten out these claws while we're here as well. Same for the other side. And then for the grasshopper, just kind of move the legs so that they're disconnected and kind of facing up like that. And then this little section of his butt is going to come off like that. And the rest of the body is just going to split down the middle and separate thusly. Now we're going to take our figure. We're going to start with the legs. We're going to take each of the halves of the grasshopper and peg it in The inside peg is going to hook into the hole on the shin, and the kneecap is going to line up with the little groove there. Just do that for both sides. I can see what I'm doing. Oh, there we go. So that's the leg armor on. And then the legs of the tiger are going to be the arm armor, and obviously they're going to have little tabs that'll slot into the forearms. Pretty much like we've done with every other armor up to this point. And then we're going to take the body armor part. This is going to flip open. And there's two pegs on the inside. Just kind of put his head up through the head hole. And those two pegs are going to hook into the holes on the back of the figure. If everything will line up properly. Sometimes the chest articulation can kind of throw things off kilter. I don't know why. Well, because then it doesn't get straight. That's why. And then go ahead and just put the shoulder bits back on. The reason I take them off in the first place is A, the instructions say to, but it also does kind of make it easier to put the body armor part on. You actually don't have to take these parts off, but it just makes it a little bit easier in the long run. Now we're going to take this little grasshopper part. This is actually going to peg into the chest on the bottom part of that emblem there. And then the hawk is going to clip in to this part on the upper chest. And hopefully stay there. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on what kind of positioning the body armor is in, and I'll get to that later. But this is Kamen Rider OOO's armor. And aesthetically, it looks pretty cool. I do like the OOO's aesthetic is very much apparent here. It reminds me quite a bit of the Super Tatoba combo that OOO's gets in some of the movies that take place after a show. And one of my favorite details here is that you have the visor spells out O's in katakana, like you would expect it to at this point. But the chest medallion here also has katakana on it for Taka, Tora, and Bata. Instead of showing the pictures of the animals on his chest, it shows the katakana there, which I thought was kind of a cute touch there. Now I do have a couple of gripes with this. I mean, they're very, very small ones. The only aesthetic one I really have is that they weren't able to, for whatever reason, put a second set of claws on his other arm. And it would make sense to do so, because OOO's had two sets of claws, one for each arm, but I guess not so much here. The other ones are kind of more functional for the toy. First up, there's no hinge on the leg armor this time. As we saw earlier, it just kind of pegged him with one peg into the shin, and there's no hinge here, so it doesn't bend with the leg. Instead, it kind of uncovers the leg if you decide to bend the knee. Which I guess, depending on how you set up certain poses, it won't be as apparent, but it still kind of bothers me sometimes. The other main thing is the body armor itself. Now, if we can move around some parts to see, I don't know if it's really apparent here, but it doesn't quite close up all the way. I mean, it can, but if you do that, then parts are going to start, especially the head part, they're going to start popping out of place. And the reasoning for this is, for whatever reason, because this can close up all the way, but for whatever reason, they didn't think that when you pegged stuff in, that basically pressing the inside of the body armor flush onto the chest of the figure would pop some of the pegs out and whatnot, and that does tend to happen if you try to close up the armor all the way. The hawk part, or the helmet part, does come out rather easily in that case, and I have had situations where the small grasshopper part also kind of pops out here and there. But overall, those are just kind of small gripes. Overall, the figure does look good, and I do like to display it on my my desk at work, which is, again, the reason why. It was at work last week when I should have been reviewing it then. Now this is probably going to be, let me just do a zoom in on this guy just so we can take up the frame here. This is more than likely going to be the last of these figures or armor sets that I'm going to get. Unfortunately, we've already gotten to a point where Bandai has started dropping the gimmick, and instead of getting armor sets, the last two things that were released and the next two things that are going to be released are all just all new figures. Sometimes of the, or mostly, rather, I should say, of the same characters that have already come out. We saw this happen with X-Aids figures as well. And it kind of bums me out because I only really want the one figure, and I want other armors to go on that figure. I don't want to get other figures, especially if they're... like, I'm not a big fan of Gates, so I didn't want a figure of him. And I'm still kind of on the fence about Waz, because they came out with a Kamen Rider Waz figure fairly recently. But, I mean, I'm not interested in Waz enough to get a figure of him. And I was really looking forward to getting Decade armor for this, but instead of coming out with Decade armor, they had a whole new figure of Decade armor ZO, and you could... take the Decade armor off and swap out a faceplate, and then it would look like Decade armor with the build form. Well, I didn't want another figure, so I guess I'm going to pass on that. But yeah, I think I might have mentioned this in the last video, but I'm pretty much at a point now where I'm starting to try to get better with money. You know, I mentioned in our podcast that I'm not buying most new games. I mean, I have like a list of 3 or 4 games that I'm planning on buying, but that's going to be it for like the whole year. Unless like something really big and comes by and I really have to get it day one, I'm not going to be buying any games this year. Same sort of thing with toys to a lesser bit of an extent. I'm not going to try to collect full sets of anything. It's just if something comes around and I'm interested in it, yeah, I may pick it up at some point down the road. But like, I'm not collecting full sets of anything anymore. I mean, heck, we've got the way, this figure set turned out. I pretty much gotten everything I want to get from that. I just got a Rider watch today in the mail. Got this Blade Rider watch here. It makes noises. But this is the only Rider watch I'm going to get. I just wanted it because it was shiny and it had Blade on it. I don't even have the belt. I'm not even planning on getting the belt or any other Rider watches. I just, it's just kind of a neat thing that I want to just kind of have, and I have it now. So that's that. So unfortunately, it may be a while before we see more Kamen Rider stuff on here, if at all, because, well, I kind of got my fill of getting full figure sets like I did with the X-Aid set, and as far as ZO is concerned, well, its set just kind of ran out of things I was interested in getting, so I guess them's the breaks. But I guess from here, most of what I have left that I want to show off, or that I really have a capability of showing off in a good way, it would be more Transformers figures, so starting with next week, I'm going to do a bunch more Transformers figures, videos, and stuff. But until then, I've been Rado Goji, and I'll be here next time. Join me, won't you?